It is time to hand out a big check this weekend. It is the Players' Championship. We're going to break things down from a PGA DFS perspective and let you know who in this loaded field we are targeting based on their salaries over at FanDuel.com. Welcome on into the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast powered by numberFire. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, joined here as always by Brandon Gdula. He is the managing editor for numberFire.com. And Brandon, you were a week early on Patrick Reed, a week early on Bryson DeChambeau. Who did we talk about last week who is now a lock to win this week? I'm trying to remember who it was.
Well, I was on Hatton and Fitzpatrick.
Okay.
Last week.
Okay. Good.
I don't think that's going to dictate. Because, I mean, like, I was on Bryson 2 weeks in a row. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, you know what? This is, the ball striking for Bryson is such a hard one to, like, get into because we know how good the driver is. But, like, his approach numbers aren't great, partially because he gained so many strokes with the driver, but also partially because his irons are not necessarily his strength, and his wedge game, like, he can drive it to like flip wedge distance and like miss a green. And it just, every time I watch Bryson, I get nervous because it seems like sometimes the advantage he gains with the driver, he doesn't always cash in on. So I don't really know this week because it's such a loaded field. This is, one of the toughest, if not the toughest fields that we'll see all year. And whenever we have that, we see flat win odds on, from FanDuel Sportsbook in my win simulations. And, it's bared out in like the popularity numbers too on FanDuel over the years with, golfers. Like it just so spread out, it's so wide open. And then on top of that, like TPC Sawgrasses, I would say anecdotally, I don't have any data, which always sucks. But like, there's so much water in play that guys just can implode, and like it just adds to the volatility this week. So, fun week to watch, not the easiest week to break down.
Yeah, we'll talk about the impact of the flatter win odds. We'll talk about the impact of the reduced popularity and things like that throughout the podcast for today. But as always, a quick reminder that Brandon will be back with you today, Tuesday, 3:30 p.m. Eastern on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and it's still March, so Periscope pages. He will be there live answering your questions about PGA DFS, PGA betting, what he likes, the players, what his win simulations, and what his models say. Go to the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, or Periscope page, wherever you want to watch. Make sure you are subscribed and come back 3:30 p.m. Eastern to check that out. Also here on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed, we will have the NBA DFS podcast back after the All-Star break with Tom Vecchio. In the meantime, he is still doing the Daily Deke for NHL. We have UFC podcast with Austin Swayman. I'm doing NASCAR podcasts. Those will also be live on YouTube Friday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. So make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed and also over on the FanDuel YouTube page. Let's check out TPC Sawgrass. Stadium course is 7,189 yards. It is a par 72. And pretty big field in play for this week. More than 150 golfers, 154 here for this week. There is a cut after the first two rounds. The top 65 plus ties make it through, which means the cut will be pretty tough for this week because a lot of dudes are not going to make it, and it is a very difficult field. So if you're looking at like 65th in win odds, just if we're going to try to illustrate the guys projected to like miss the cut, like Taylor Gooch is there, like fun. So tough to identify golfers who will make the cut this week. That'll be a major emphasis for sure. Brandon, when we are trying to do so, what should we emphasize? Like, is there a certain archetype of golfer that stands out here? What do your numbers say about TPC Sawgrass?
Usually the first thing I look at each week, just because like I posit that strokes gained approach is number one. I'm going to weight it the most whenever I'm looking at things. It's going to matter the most. And if you're not good with approach, probably not going to play you, probably not going to bet you. So the first thing that I actually like look at after the default is your driving stats, and which driving stats matter specifically between distance and accuracy. There's sometimes an emphasis on one, sometimes there isn't. This week there is one, and it's actually on driving accuracy. It's a Pete Dye setup, so sometimes you just have to be able to put the ball where you need to, and there's a little bit more of an emphasis then on accuracy over distance. And that does make things more fun in a sense, because it just allows, like, it doesn't necessarily disqualify any golfers for not being long enough. But on the flip side, long golfers who don't hit a ton of fairways aren't necessarily disqualified either, because they can either overpower certain situations, or they, in theory, can club down and hit fairways when they need to. So it just kind of brings everyone into play off the tee. Then you need to have those irons. But, strokes gained approach, like I said, is always the most important tee to green stat, because it just accounts for the most opportunities to gain strokes. Your tee shots on par threes, your second shots on most holes. And approach play typically explains 34.7% of scoring dispersion across PGA Tour courses, according to Data Golf. But at TPC Sawgrass, it jumps up to 38.5%. So more of how guys separate is explained by approach than typical. And I would imagine part of that has to do with the fact that, water balls will drag down your strokes gained approach pretty heavily. Putting and around the green play kind of look like as important as average, but 88 bunkers on the course. And we have seen strokes gained around the green or scrambling kind of be something that, like, the players' winners, the top five, kind of do separate in. So I have that weighted in a little bit, but I'm actually trying to keep the key stats down. I usually highlight 5, but I have 4 this week, possibly 5, depending on if you weight both of these. But number 1, strokes gained approach. Number 2, driving accuracy, although I wouldn't fault anyone, and I'm still weighting in strokes gained off the tee, but it's definitely a course where accuracy can help you. Strokes gained around the green is number 3, and then just birdie or better rate, because scores can get a little bit low depending on the weather. And if you dig back through, you'll see a lot of variation, but it typically depends on weather, which we'll talk about later on in the show.
I'll spoil it. There's no bad weather this week. Good to go. So no worries about that. With regards to the off the tee play, I think that, and also with the around the green play, it's worth mentioning the strength of the field, because when I look at the numbers I look at and where golfers who did well at this event ranked in various stats for the full PGA Tour season, you're going to see that things are pretty even between distance and accuracy. That itself is noteworthy, because in most really strong field events, you're going to see distance play out because there are so many big hitters, and the top golfers naturally are really big hitters. So the fact that accuracy wound up being almost on par with distance, to me, says we need to up the emphasis on accuracy. The change that I made is I did go with good drives gained as opposed to accuracy or fairways gained, because I think there is value in golfers who can hit it where they want to when they need to. Whereas, I don't want to overlook golfers who are okay missing fairways when it's fine. Yeah. So I think that's why I made that slight alteration there.
Yeah, and for anyone who doesn't know, good drives are either a hit fairway, or if you miss the fairway but still hit the green in regulation, which generally means you put yourself in a good enough spot still to hit the green in regulation. So, that's a good stat. Of the basic stats, I think that's probably a better stat than just straight up driving accuracy. But I think what we're getting at is that typically when we're looking at these strong fields, it's like we got to be long because all the long guys are here, right? The longest hitters, and that's not specifically the case this week. So it keeps more guys in play, and we'll talk a lot about one player at the top, one of the elites comes to mind anytime that's the case, and it's Webb Simpson.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing with the around the green play, the reason I think it's worthwhile to factor that in this week is because it's such a good field. Now, you do see non-elite players occasionally perform really well here. I love Siwoo Kim. I think Siwoo Kim's awesome. But Siwoo Kim is not he's not on a Rory level, not on a DJ level. He won here a couple years ago. So you can see non-elite players win. But I think when the field is so tough, I want to put a heavier emphasis on finding golfers who lack, as you would call them, based on your spreadsheets, a lack of red flags. So I do want to factor in around the green play, not because it can prop them up, but because it can prevent them from just totally imploding. I think that's kind of the two alterations I want to make because of the field strength are making sure I do emphasize placement, but then also factoring in around the green play because it's just a tougher field and I don't want them to have as many holes.
Yeah, that's always something that I feel a little I'll say embarrassed by, saying like, you know what, you got to be good off the tee, got to have good irons, got to hit your wedges well and be good when you get in trouble, and you got to make your putts. It's like that's what golf is. But the tougher that these fields get, the more that matters, especially because this is not like, and you can say whatever you want. It's not like a gimmicky course in the sense that you have to have one key stat. It's more of a test than just to simplify it in that regard. And look, like the past winners here have been Rory, Webb, Siwoo, Jason Day, and Ricky Fowler. So like big names, and then Siwoo Kim. I think Martin Keimer was before that, but typically whenever you get the best of the best together, one of the best wins, and that's what should really dictate a lot of what we decide for this week.
Yeah. Before we get into past history here, I do want to ask you, you alluded to reduced popularity before, or flatter distribution of popularity and roster rates. What did you find when you were looking back at past? I mean, did you look at last year? I guess because I don't even know if did you publish roster rates last? Because that was when last year is just wild to think back about. But did you publish roster rates from last year?
No, I think it got scrapped. So I don't have that data.
Well, I mean, the contest got voided. So
so I don't have it. But I have 2018 and 2019, which is 2 years. But I mean, that's 2 years of 150 plus golfers, 300 plus, in this sample. And no golfer was on even 24% of FanDuel lineups. The chalkiest golfer in this 2-event sample was Rory at 23.9% when he did win, which it tells a lot, because if you don't actually track or know what is typical for the most popular golfer in a field, it averages about 40%, give or take. And even in tougher fields, you would think it's 33 to 35% because you have more options. But again, this is about as tough of a field as we get all year, any year. And so, we'll typically talk about being overweight on a certain player, which just means our exposure. So if we have someone on 60% of our lineups and they're on 40% of overall lineups, we say we have 20%. We're 20% overweight. To get to that for this week, that 20% mark, you might need to have them on 45% because nobody's really going to be on 25% or more. There might be someone who slips through, but just historically, again, this all checks out from a bigger sample too with majors. In tougher fields, we just see the popularity be more spread out.
And I think that looking at the FanShare sports tags right now, the golfers who project to be popular who are getting a lot of buzz are also in loaded ranges. So even those guys who are getting a lot of buzz right now probably will not be 40%. So you said there may be a guy who leaks through. It's possible, but I would bet that there probably is not this week. So I think that we can probably assume that it's going to be capped around 25 to 30% for the top guy. And we'll talk about the impact of that, but also just the flatter win odds in the bookmaker section in just a bit. But first, if you're looking to bet the players this weekend, FanDuel Sportsbook has an offer for you. Right now, FanDuel is offering a chance to spin the under par bonus wheel if you bet on the PGA. Place a $50+ bet on an outright winner for the 2021 Players Championship PGA Tour and get one spin on the under par bonus wheel. The result of the spin will determine the bonus you get in site credit for each stroke your golfer finished the tournament below par. Maximum $50 total bonus. Head over to FanDuel Sportsbook to bet on the PGA today. Must be 21 plus and present in Colorado, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, or West Virginia. First online, real money wager only. Refund issues a non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See full terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? In Colorado, call 1-800-522-4700. In Iowa, call 1-800-BETS-OFF. In Indiana, call 1-800-9-WITH-IT. In Michigan, for confidential help, call 1-800-270-7117. In New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Illinois, and Virginia, call 1-800-GAMBLER. In Tennessee, call the Tennessee Red Line, 1-800-889-9789. Or in West Virginia, visit 1-800-GAMBLER.net. Let's take a look at golfers who have done well at TPC Sawgrass in the past. We mentioned last year things getting banged after one round, and Hideki Matsuyama, I'm sure, understood the decision, probably was on board with the decision because, public health matters, but probably a little bummed at the same time because he was ripping it up through the first round. What are you seeing with Hideki looking at 2020, but also beyond that here at TPC Sawgrass?
Yeah, I mean, I think people were ready to crown Hideki as the 2020 Players Champion because he went 9 under through 1, and he led everyone else by two strokes. But I mean, there are 3 more rounds, and like it just feels weird with Hideki getting a lot of buzz for what he did, and it's deserved. But he didn't win; it was one really good round. But I think that's gonna drive a lot of people to look closer at Hideki at 10.5 on FanDuel, which is a very fair price. And if anyone's just sort of tuning in to us because it's the Players and it's a big event, you don't listen to us a lot, that fits a balanced build. And in tough fields, I think balanced builds have a lot of merit, even if the optimals haven't really bared that out. But I feel like we haven't talked about Hideki in a long time, at least not in a positive sense. But and it's not because he's been bad; it's just because he's amazing tee to green and just doesn't putt well enough to convert and win. But I would imagine he gets a lot of buzz this week. So he was 9 under last year through 1, but he's been good here overall. Played here since 2014. His finishes are 23rd, 17th, 7th, 22nd, cut, and 8th. He's striped the irons like really, really well in all of his starts here, aside from that one missed cut. And he enters this event with 2 top 20 finishes with really solid tee to green data, which is more important than just the finishes to me. And again, good iron play because that's what Hideki does. So we want we want ball strikers, guys who can just really hit the irons well. That's Hideki. He's done well here. I'm still having a hard time though jumping back in on someone who can just still implode on the greens. Any read for you on Hideki this week?
I think that I would need like a bigger discount to accept such a major known and projectable red flag. I think we can call Hideki's putting issues projectable at this point.
Yeah.
I would have a tough time getting there because he's in a good, like he's not like he's the only good ball striker in that range. Like Tyrrell Hatton just talking about how he's destined to win this week because we were on him last week. He's right there. Tony Finau, not a good putter. However, significantly better on Bermuda than Hideki is. Like, shows you how bad Hideki is if we're talking about Tony Finau as being the preferred option. So I think there is value in using golfers in that salary tier because if I can have more guys in the mid-range with legitimate paths to winning, outside of maybe Finau, with legitimate paths to winning, that's viable here. And it's pretty valuable here. I can avoid the pitfalls of the super low salaried guys. I think there's value being there, but I'd rather use other guys when I am there. Specifically, Hatton, I think, is a standout relative to Hideki for me. What about for you?
Yeah, so I have I include adjustments to strokes gained data round by round, and then I also weight them for like recency. So I have like weighted adjusted strokes gained numbers. And if you look at all the golfers on FanDuel with a salary of 9,400 or above, there's one golfer who is below the 25th percentile in weighted adjusted strokes gained putting over the past year. Hideki in the 16th percentile.
I'm shocked in the 16th percentile. I'll be fully honest with you. Seems high.
He gets some bump because he plays
tough
in
fields.
Tougher fields,
Yeah.
so that helps. But you spoke to the Bermuda numbers. I have him third percentile. Fantasy Nationals data has him third percentile there. Over the past 100 rounds. Now these greens are overseeded, since they moved it to March, but I would still think Bermuda is the most dominant that we could look at if you want to. I'm just kind of looking more at long-term putting than any surface splits, but specifically terrible for him on Bermuda. So, there's a lot to like about Hideki, but he's going to have to pull out one of those rare. It's rare either way. Rare that he gains enough strokes to win, or rare enough where he gains so many strokes tee to green that just an okay putter can get him a win. So either way, we're kind of I just feel like with Hideki, you have to bank on an outlier performance one way or the other,
right?
Either with the putter or the tee to green being so good, and I'd rather look elsewhere.
It is worth noting that with Hideki, because he's 10-5, you don't necessarily need him to win, but you can find golfers in a similar range who can win, and I'd rather not take that automatic ding.
Yeah,
I don't want to take the L on purpose.
Yeah, I don't like rostering golfers who I don't think can win or who specifically get me access to a win. So like if it's a value golfer who I know is not going to win or strongly believe is not going to win, but it gets me to Jon Rahm, for example, that's different. For Hideki, I can play Tyrrell Hatton, who could win, Patrick Reed, who could win, although I don't really like Reed. I love Daniel Berger this week. So I think that's the distinction for me. So I think we're kind of on the same page where we're just not probably going to be as high on Hideki as most people.
We do not have concerns about winning for Webb Simpson because he did so back in 2018. So let's talk about Webb here. Former winner at TPC Sawgrass. It's not a surprise he would do well here given his style of game. What's interesting is that Webb won that event without feasting on approach. He actually lost 0.7 strokes for that event in approach, which is very weird. His short game was just so good that it didn't matter. In 2019, Webb gained 2.2 off the tee and 1.7 in approach, finished 16th there and was 16th in 2017. If you look at the recent form, Webb ranks 40th in approach, which seems low for him, but I don't think it's too big of a concern. He gained 4 at the WGC Workday and 5.6 at the Tournament of Champions, and those are both really good fields. And Webb is another guy who you need to adjust for field strength because he plays in a lot of really tough events. He's also one of the best Bermuda putters in the planet. He's 11-2, pretty forgiving for a guy with his profile. So, he's 11-2. I think that is a lot of forgiveness to get a lot of win equity. I think there's value in Webb's win odds too at 22-1. What's your view of Webb Simpson for this week?
One of my favorites this week, just because he is pretty much he's every bit as good, if maybe not better, than everyone else in the world. The issue is that he just doesn't nuke the ball off the tee.
Right.
So anytime that's not a prerequisite, Webb gets a huge boost. And I've been talking for a few months now about just liking to roster guys at the top who I think can lead the field in strokes gained tee to green and strokes gained putting, because it's not like I'm expecting them to do both in the same week, but having that flexibility is amazing for your floor and upside. And Webb absolutely can do that on a course where you don't have to be long off the tee. He can gain some strokes off the tee in another way, or at least not lose strokes, at least not fall behind. And we know for sure that the irons are good. I have an 87th percentile over the past year when adjusted for field strength. So in strokes and approach, I should say. So there's not a whole lot to dislike about Webb, not even the salary.
Yeah, I like him a lot, actually, just because 11-2 is so forgiving for someone who very clearly has a similar ceiling to a lot of guys in the field. So I think Webb is a rock star little play for this week and someone I want to build around for sure. Let's talk about a guy we alluded to earlier, Siwoo Kim, another former winner at this event. Last week, he withdrew, but there hasn't been any negative news around the reasoning for his withdrawal. Pretty easy to say, hey, the player is an event he's won before is coming up next week. He shot an 80. Let's peace out and get ahead of the travel. So probably not a huge concern. What are you seeing with Siwoo Kim both recently and at the Players?
Yeah, so, like you said, Siwoo shot a first round 80, but he finished his round. And, the Players coming up, there was no report that I could find on why he withdrew, but that also means that there was no report on an injury. So in this sense, maybe no news is good news. I like the idea of getting Siwoo Kim at, potentially, again, popularity numbers are probably irrelevant overall, but I think it might be safe to say that Siwoo will be lower on people's lists than he maybe deserves to be. Because since his win at the American Express, he went cut, 50th, cut, withdrawal. So could be an injury for sure. Could be a winner's hangover as well. But he won the Players in 2017. He's played TPC Sawgrass 4 times. He's made all 4 cuts. Not all of the results are fantastic, but his salary is only $8,900, which definitely helps. And he ranks 4th in the field in strokes gained per round at Pete Dye courses, according to Fantasy National, trailing just Rory, Jason Day, and Dustin Johnson. So it's going to take a little bit of a leap of faith to get on Siwoo Kim, who is definitely, despite the 3 cuts or the 3 missed cuts, the withdrawal, he's actually not as volatile as he used to be. So can you, I won't say trust Kim, but do you have interest in using Siwoo Kim for some of your lineups?
Yeah, the rewording there was key because I can't trust him. So the rewording was good.
Yeah.
I think that he is a worthwhile player to use or golfer to use because, like, if you were to ignore the results recently and ignore the withdrawal, I think he would make a lot of sense. Like, he's not the most accurate guy off the tee, but like he's not erratic. 44th in approach. He ranks 2nd around the green, which is pretty valuable. Not a good Bermuda putter, but I think he does enough elsewhere. Also, the 8,000 range is okay. It's not glamorous. And there aren't guys outside of our boy Russell Henley, who's technically in the 9,000 range, but he's exactly 9,000. There's no one else there I want to necessarily have like 10,000% exposure to. So I'm okay taking shots at guys who I know have a path to upside. Siwoo Kim has that. Other guys down there do too. So I think that what I will likely wind up doing is mixing and matching in the value range, finding a couple of guys I want to rotate through down there, using them at relatively lower exposure compared to usual, but like taking swipes at guys who have the ability to actually give me a difference making score at a low salary. And I think that Siwoo Kim deserves to be in that rotation.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to disregard the 80 for sure because one round of data is not predictive of anything. We saw Dustin Johnson just implode and it didn't matter. Like, for example, recently, with scores in the 80s.
I shot like a 97 on Thursday, and he was fine.
I don't really factor in like a missed cut whenever we have so much more data, which is a larger sample is more predictive. So I don't really have too many concerns with Siwoo Kim. It's just a matter of how often I'll be down here. I know from seeing the optimal lineups that golfers in the 8 and even 7,000 range are possible to make, the optimal lineup, even in a very tough field. But that does not mean that I'm going to be building around golfers in the 8,000 range. So he'll be a rotational piece, but that's pretty much all that anyone's going to be below 9,000 for me anyway.
And I think that's the right way to approach things, just in general, but also in this field specifically. I think it lends itself towards that. Again, accepting Russell Henley, who is a deity. Adam Scott is another guy with good history at TPC Sawgrass. He has great history here. He has not missed a cut on the U.S. side of things since the end of the COVID layoff. So that's all good. But there's some underlying stuff here that raises red flags for me on him at $9,700. So I want to talk about him here in the course history section. History for Scott at TPC Sawgrass is great. He has gained 39.32 total strokes the past 5 complete Players' Championships. He's cleared all of the golfers by almost 7 strokes. So really good form. And that doesn't even count when he won back here in 2004, finished 8th in 2005. I don't think it should count because it was so long ago. What does it matter? But he's good here. And as mentioned, the recent finishes are good. That's important, but those good finishes recently are not supported by the data. Scott has lost at least 1.9 strokes in approach in 3 of 5 events since January 1st, in 10 measured events since the return from COVID. Again, he's made the cut in all these. He has lost strokes in approach 5 times. He still had some spike weeks in there. Like, there have been some fine weeks. I am okay buying into spike weeks on a guy who is 9,000. 97 in a loaded field, tougher sell for me. So I'm having a hard time getting into Adam Scott at $9,700. What about you?
Yeah, we've seen Adam Scott's driving. His strokes getting off the tee just kind of curve back more toward, world average, I should probably say. Data Golf has they have their adjusted strokes gained as well. And his results off the tee have just sort of scaled back to average. He's at 0.15 this year, 0.11 last year, but was up in like the 0.45 to 0.6 range. Even as recently as like 4 to 5 years ago. But his putting has really come along relative to where he had been. So it's possible that, at his age, he's focused more on the putting, trying to not working as much on the driving. And his irons are still a plus, but they're not necessarily elite at the moment. So, yeah, the thing for me is the salary is a little high. I mean, it's not. I would probably have put him in that range anyway, because he's Adam Scott. But
Sure.
Like you said, the results are fine, but it's not really supported by the data, at least in the most predictive sense. So I wasn't really drawn to Scott this week at all.
I think that when you look at golfers in this range specifically, they're all going to have at least one red flag. I think with Scott, it's more than one, and his red flag is in areas that are more concerning than a lot of guys down here are bad putters or bad around the green. I'd rather take some chances on that than a guy whose approach play is pretty bad. And Scott's is sometimes good, but also just really inconsistent. So I'm not going to get there. I can say with full confidence he will not be my player pool. There are some guys I like here despite their red flags. We'll talk about later on, but I'm okay passing over Scott for this week. So let's dive into current form. Golfers who are in better form than Adam Scott, one of whom is Jordan Spieth. Now, if you had told me 2 months ago that Jordan Spieth would be 10-7 at the Players, I would have, my jaw would have dropped, but it makes sense. He's golfing pretty well right now. What do you see in the data with Spieth, and is it enough for you to get on him at 10-7 in a really, really good field?
The form's good enough, but there's more to it than that.
Okay, dive in. Tell me more.
So, it's the Players. People might be digging in for the first time in a while because it's, about to be that time of year where it's all these big events. And Jordan Spieth back on the menu. His finishes, over the past 5 have gotten him up to 9th in the world in Data Golf's, adjusted strokes numbers. His finishes over the past 5 are 4th, 3rd, 15th, 4th over the past 4. I don't know what my notes were supposed to say there, but Spieth has been striping the irons for the most part. He's gained 0.3, 7.8. 4, lost 0.8, and then gained 5.5 over his past 5 starts. The driver's cold, losing an average of 0.7 strokes off the tee per event over the past 5. And he is in the 2nd percentile in fairways gained over his past 100 rounds. That's the big issue for me. And he has not been particularly good at TPC Sawgrass, even whenever he was at the top of his game. He has a 4th place finish in his debut, actually, which is a little bit rare because this is kind of one of those courses where you got to play it once before you really figure things out. But 4th cut, 41st cut. And only one of those, the miscut in 2019, really coincide with when Spieth was on the downward trajectory, but he lost more than 5 strokes off the tee in 2 rounds in that missed cut. So there's a lot to like with Jordan Spieth, specifically the irons. But if we need him to place the ball, that's the one thing that I cannot trust him to do. So he could get into a lot of trouble. So the form is good enough.
Yeah.
The fit is less appealing. So any thoughts on Spieth at 10-7?
Yeah, so we have a difference here where you're talking about fairways gained. I am looking at good drives gained. And there can be golfers who have a discrepancy there where maybe they are erratic, but when they need to club down and they can. So you look at Jordan Spieth. You mentioned the fairways gained is not great. Good drives gained is actually worse. He is 151st in the field there, according to Fantasy National, with the past 50 rounds. Not ideal. So I think that the gains and approach are enticing, and that is definitely good. That's not going to lead to me targeting him here for the reasons you discussed with the fit. I think that what it does is something we discussed with Brooks Koepka a couple weeks ago, where seeing the improvements there allow me to target him in the future. Not this week, though. I think that when it's a better fit, I will be more receptive to Spieth than I have been in the past. I think the concern I always kind of have with Spieth is that people tend to be overzealous about him and think that he's back. We're not seeing that so far based on the fan share data. I don't think he'll be very popular this week, but I don't think I'm going to be in on him because of the driving fit more so than the popularity. So I think that I'm on the same page as you where I'm okay missing out, but I am receptive to him in the future, just not here, I don't think.
Yeah, I'm like I said, the form is good enough for me to play Spieth.
Agreed.
I just don't think it's the right fit. And I could be wrong. He's been kind of defying everything that I thought anyway, but
right.
It's just that's still the part of his game that is more lacking long term. And so he could get into trouble. And it's actually Barrett, like I said, the thing that really is keeping me away is, and we don't look at course form too heavily, but he has not really done that well here overall. So factoring everything in, I think there are just so many better options than Spieth, who I hope is like in contention because it's fun, but
and it gets more attention on it, which is good for DFS and stuff like that. So you'd love to be in contention, but then maybe not getting the best finish, just lagging a little bit on Sunday. Let's talk about Matthew Fitzpatrick. He is in the Webb Simpson bucket, where he is a guy who should benefit from a course that doesn't require distance. And that's good because Matty Fitz comes in with some really impressive form recently. He has played 3 stateside tournaments since January 1st. His worst finish in those is 11th at the WGC Workday. He was 5th at the Genesis and 10th at the Arnold Palmer, and those are pretty good events, good finishes. And that's in addition to what he did on the Euro Tour late 2020, early 2021. He won the DP World Tour Championship in Dubai at the end of 2020, missed the cut at the Abu Dhabi HSBC, 17th at the Omega Dubai Desert Classic. Those were generally pretty good fields. Fitzpatrick's finishes here have been aided by good putting, but that's not a fluke. He's just a good putter. He ranks 3rd on Bermuda the past 100 rounds. So he's $9,900 this week. That seems to be for good reason. So I think that Fitzpatrick, although he may not be my favorite guy in this tier, is someone I will wind up using this week. And I'm pretty sure about that. I feel pretty good about using him this week, even if he's not my favorite. What about you?
Yeah, my win sims like him relative to his salary. He's popping as the most likely winner. Sorry, I'm doing this on the fly now, but like below 10-2, I think he has the best win odds there for me. So not a huge drop from 10-2 to 99, but like he's kind of one of the like a little bit of a gatekeeper where I think the field drops off more. And for Fitzpatrick, we know that he can place the ball where he needs to. His long-term adjusted approach numbers put him in the 69th percentile, which of course is what you want to see, and just a fantastic putter. So not a whole lot to worry about, I think, with Fitzpatrick for this week.
Yeah. And is he at the top of that tier for you?
Not necessarily at the top, but he would be up there. I'm actually looking more. So in a field like this, I generally hover around the 10,000 range because we get guys like Fitzpatrick and Scheffler and Berger and like Sungjae all right around 10K. I might be a little more in the lower 9K range, but I don't really ultimately know where I'm going to wind up. But Fitzpatrick does do enough to be someone I would consider playing in this range for sure.
Yep, I agree with that. So let's move on to some guys in the lower 9,000 you just alluded to. One of which is Billy Horschel. We'll talk about Max Homa after that. But let's just get a general thought rolling here on the low 9,000 range. Starting off with Horschel, $9,300. What are you seeing with him recently?
Yeah, the form is definitely not flawless. So he's coming off a missed cut at the Arnold Palmer, and I think, I would have to study this, but I would imagine anyone coming off a missed cut is, see some sort of a dip in popularity. But I also missed the cut at the Farmers, but I wouldn't put a whole lot of stock into that just based on how the courses are different between the two from what he's getting this week in Torrey Pines. Like last week, he lost 5.7 strokes from a short game, which is atypical for Horschel. That includes a round and on the greens. He gained 2.6 with the irons, though, which is, if you're going to miss a cut, that's what I'd like to see, is the irons being, a plus and you just struggle with the short game. He has 2 top 7 finishes in 2021 with mostly like baseline at worst iron play in them. So he's not really getting himself out of tournaments because of his irons, which is the lower down you go in salary, that's starts to be what you hope for, is less, you're not going to find these elite ball strikers unless they are only elite ball strikers and are also terrible putters, which is definitely not Billy Horschel's game. And he has some solid form at TPC Sawgrass. I would say it's solid, not elite. Since 2014, he's made 5 of 6 cuts. Every finish has been between 13th and 37th. He's not hanging at the back of the cut line or anything, but just one top 15, which came back in 2015. He actually leads the field in strokes gained putting on Pete Dye courses, which might not mean anything, but it could, according to Fantasy National. So solid current form, definitely some volatility in that current form for sure. But does he do enough for you at 9,300 relative to Max Homa and these other guys? So talk to me about Homa, and we'll talk about this range.
Yeah, so we talked about Homa a lot in the current form section, and it's usually been really good, like glowing stuff, justifiably, because he got a win there. And he's been doing really well. But this is a tougher field, a different field than what he's been in for the most part. But I think we can look at what Homa's done in the tougher events and kind of try to extrapolate for this week. He played at the WGC workday. He finished 22nd in a no-cut event there, lost 0.3 strokes in approach, and he was propped up to a good finish relatively good finish, by gaining 3 strokes around the green. Finished 10th at the Arnold Palmer, but that was just driven by putting. He actually lost 0.7 strokes tee to green there. So there are some red flags with Homa, and there are golfers around this tier who seem to grade out really well. I say around because I actually think like the Herschel Homa tier is disappointing. I think like the guys above them and the guys below them are more enticing to me. So I'm a little bit wishy-washy on this tier. So thoughts on Homa and Herschel specifically for you, and what do you think about the low 9,000 range?
So Homa's form is like quite good once adjusted for the field. He's about top 14, top 13 or so, both over the past 30 days and over the past 3 months, according to Data Golf's adjusted strokes gained numbers. I'm not specifically on Homa for this week. The main reason is just the fairway numbers, which again could be getting me off of a good play. Sure. But I think that we can do maybe a little bit better. I like Corey Connors. Probably going back to Harris English because he's just too good long-term for that salary to me. And then with Herschel, he's someone I'm never excited to play, but like he does enough, right? Like he should be able to place it. So long as he doesn't implode, which he can he's very emotional when he plays. So I'm struggling with how I want to approach this week because there are names that we've talked about in weaker fields, and Cameron Davis is 8,700. We talk about him a lot. We talk about Lonto Griffin a lot. There's a lot I like about Siwoo Kim, but are these guys going to win?
Lonto is. He was freaking third on Saturday, and I was like, oh baby, we're gonna cash out the win bets the entire year with this 100-1, and then just gutted me.
Yeah. So, I mean, just going back to something I said earlier is these guys don't have to win necessarily, but they have to have like top 15 upside. And they have to unlock you're getting the winner. And so if you think the winner comes from maybe that like 10K range, you don't have to be even down this low. So I'm struggling with that. It's more that I don't love the range overall, but there are a few names who I'm okay with. And that would include Herschel. It would possibly include Homa, but he's just not one of my favorite plays down here.
And Herschel over Homa, correct?
For me, yeah.
I agree. I think that I would phrase it the same way, where there are some guys I like, and I think it's the same guys. Corey Connors, good. Abraham Ancer, solid. I can get on board with that too. I will also be receptive to Harry English and getting there. But I think that that's enough guys where I'm okay squeezing out probably Herschel, but definitely Homa from my player pool as a result of that. Let's take a look at what the bookmakers are saying for this week. Dustin Johnson is a favorite at FanDuel Sportsbook. He is 12-1. Bryson DeChambeau and John Rahm are both 17-1, followed by Rory McIlroy at 18-1. Justin Thomas is 19-1. Colin Morikawa and Webb Simpson checking at 22-1 with Patrick Cantlay, Xander Schauffele, and Victor Hovland right behind. Cantlay is at 23, Xander 24, Hovland 25, and then Jordan Spieth rounds up the top group at 30-1. So the odds here are obviously flatter than usual, both due to the nature of the event with a strong field and, the strength of the field. So how do the flatter win odds influence your view of the event from an exposure perspective? Like, are you going to cap your exposure a little bit lower than you usually would to golfers, or are you playing things similar to usual here this week?
So that really comes down to risk tolerance, which is maybe a little bit of a cop-out answer, but I think that's...
I think it's the right answer.
Comes down to risk tolerance, really. I mean, again, anecdotally, it's a volatile event because one shot can really eject someone from making the cut. There are a lot of golfers, a lot of good golfers who can make the cut. I think really one of the things driving the current success of the PGA Tour is just how good the middle, like maybe the second and third tiers are now. Yes, the elites are elite, but there's a lot of good golfers. Like a Max Homa can make a cut. Like, it's not something that would surprise us. We saw him win the Genesis. Like, these guys are good. So I think it comes down to like risk tolerance. Again, in 2018, we just had like a really weird optimal lineup. The total draft percentage was 20%. It was just like under 20%. Webb Simpson was the most popular golfer in that lineup. When he won, he was 6.8% rostered on FanDuel, which is crazy low. And then Rory and Fleetwood were the two most popular golfers, in either of the past two players. But like, we see volatility, we see volatile results. So the 2018 optimal lineup spent 52,200, and then in 2019 it was 57,000. Now, what does that tell us? It doesn't mean leave 8,000 on the table. It doesn't mean even leave 3,000 on the table. It doesn't mean the best way to play this is to be rostering as many golfers in the 7K range as you can so that you can play Rory, DJ, and Rahm. That's not what this is telling us. I think that there's merit this week to keeping still a core of golfers, but lowering your max on them. Like you said, you don't have to play anyone 60 to 70% this week. You will have so much leverage in the field if you do that because nobody's going to be even 25% rostered. I think there's also merit in just like fading the chalk. And by what I really mean by that is no one's like traditionally chalky this week just because the exposures are so low. But what I really mean is finding the guys nobody's talking about. That could be Xander. That could be, take your pick this week. And I think that's the right way to play it. So still keeping a core, but maybe like a higher floor on my core in terms of exposure. I don't think like a 2% exposure to anyone is going to get you much this week, but also like a lower ceiling. So still a core, but flat, like, I don't know, whatever this means.
So
with my exposure.
The one way I would explain it is that like I do things via combinations. Like I want to have Rory paired with Webb. I want to have Rory paired with JT. This is just example. This is not specific to this event, but like that's the way I would do it. So usually what I would do, or sometimes what I can do, is I'll have a group of 3 studs, and I will rotate through getting each combination of those guys. That results in each guy being on 67% of the rosters. This week, you can expand that to 4. So I think that that's the change for me is expanding the number of golfers I rotate through while still keeping it a relatively low number. Like picking 4 of these studs, that's still pretty tough, but it gets me 50% exposure to each of them and like keeping the similar roster construction throughout those. So I think that's the way to view it, for me at least, is to rotate through a larger number of golfers, but not making it larger by much. Because like I still want to make sure I have commitment to them. So if I do pick right, I can benefit. I think that's the alteration I would make personally, given the way that I play things via combinations, trying to get the right pairings and stuff like that. That's the way I would change it. Which movement have you seen since things opened at FanDuel Sportsbook, or at least I guess reopened Monday?
I just looked since Monday. Based on the odds as I first saw them, I wasn't expecting too many guys to shorten or have their odds, move closer to being a favorite. But Abraham Answer did go from 85 to 1 to 80 to 1, and Corey Connors went from 95 to 90 to 1. There were, however, as I anticipated, way more guys seeing their odds lengthen. That included Bryson DeChambeau and Rory McIlroy going from 13 to 17 and 18 respectively. Hideki did fall from 34 to 40. Tommy Fleetwood, 36 to 41. Joaquin Neiman, a big fall from 50 to 75, which I'm cool with. Neiman would, I think he's just in that upper 9K range. I would have no issues with Neiman. Cameron Smith, 65 to 75. I don't know if this is a Cam Smith course. It might be. I don't actually know. He just didn't really pop for me, so I didn't dig into him too much. Will Zalatoris, 65 to 80, and then Adam Scott, 70 to 80.
Does it concern you that they've clearly gotten no action on Neiman? Because I like Neiman too. Does it concern you at all that they clearly have no betting interest in him, or no?
No, not particularly, because there's so many other guys to bet on.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's really what it comes down to for me. Also, Cam Smith, 2 missed cuts and a 56 to the players with horrible ball striking stats. So
seems good. Which lower salaried golfers, if any, have odds to stand out to you?
Yeah, I mean, this is not the week to be digging into the values with a lot of win equity because they don't exist. The only golfer below 9,000, or the golfer below 9,000 with the best odds is Lonto Griffin at 130 to 1. And then if you look below 9,500, the best odds belong to Abraham Answer at 80 to 1. Christian Bezuidenhout and Sergio Garcia, 85 to 1. Corey Connors, 90 to 1. These guys are all 95 to 1. Jason Kokrak, Lee Westwood, Billy Horschel, Max Homa, and Harris English is 100 to 1. So not the best week to be finding huge win equity from value golfers on FanDuel.
Yeah, so it goes back to what you said before. Like, you don't need those guys to win. You need them to grant you access to other winners. And I think that's a key for this week. Because it's like, if you're picking your value plays just based on win odds, probably taking the wrong approach to that for this week, especially, for sure. Mentioned before, the weather forecast, pretty good this week. No concerns. Wind speeds never get above 10 miles per hour. There don't appear to be any advantages based on tee time. So giddy up. Let's dive on into our player picks for the Players Championship based on the salaries over at FanDuel.com. Starting off with you, Brandon. Who do you like in the upper tier on FanDuel this week?
Well, for clarification purposes, you got to our note sheet first.
As always.
I would have picked your 2 golfers as my top 2 for what it's worth. So I'm coming at it more from my secondary.
Those guys are, just to give it away, John Rahm and Webb Simpson.
Okay, I didn't want to.
Who do you like in addition to them? I can spoil it.
So
if
then
people have listened this long, clearly they don't prioritize their time all that much, so we're fine. We're living on borrowed time here. We're good.
So then I guess my tertiary and quaternary plays.
This is why the people stuck around. Worth your bang. All right, let's
go. Would be Colin Morikawa Bunga, as you know, I say. You definitely don't say that. You don't like when I say that, I don't think. But
I'm all for dumb nicknames. No, I fully endorse it even if I don't use it. This is great.
So Morikawa, his salary is 11.3 on FanDuel. And look, if I have to pivot away from Rahm and Webb, I'm cool because this is a week to do it. There are so many options, and based on the research I've done, the best weeks to pivot anyway are weeks like this, just finding golfers who get, overlooked. So why not Morikawa? He's hyper accurate, 90th percentile in fairways gained. He's the field leader in adjusted strokes gained approach. And that also includes weights for recency. So, it should be great for Morikawa. No official finishes here, but was 4 under through his first round last year with good putting, also good ball striking. I would imagine he fits the course well. Although I am seeing that my guy Xander might be the one who gets some disrespect this week, so I'd be totally cool building around Xander and Morikawa as well.
I think the Morikawa is great. I like him a lot as well for the reasons that you mentioned. I think that I was kind of expecting going in that he would get a recent win bump, but like the fan share tags and then there's not much happening. And as you said, there doesn't tend to be super chalky guys. So I think that Morikawa will probably be one of the guys I rotate through. We talked about having 4, so he'll probably be one of those 4. I also do like John Rahm though. Like if I were picking a golfer for this event straight up, I'd probably pick Dustin Johnson over Jon Rahm. But a $500 discount, that's quite a bit. And I don't think the gap between them is on par with that. So I'll take Rahm. He grades out well statistically across the board. 25th in good drives gained, 29th in approach, 33rd around the green, also 66th in Bermuda putting. It's his worst surface, but when your worst is 66th, not too bad. He did struggle in approach at the WGC workday, but it shouldn't bother us too much. He actually gained 4.8 the week before that at the Genesis, 5.4 at the Waste Management. The WGC workday was actually his first time finishing outside the top 25 since the WGC St. Jude over the summer. So tremendous floor and also clearly upside too. He was 12th of the players back in 2019, even though he lost 2.8 strokes around the green, gained 6.9 on approach and 3.1 off the tee. So the course fit is there for Jon Rahm. I'm going to try to be overweight on him here. I think that he makes a lot of sense. That's why I'm on him. You said you're on Rahm too. What puts you there?
Yeah, he'd be the one golfer I would feel best with. What puts me on him is just the long-term adjusted strokes gain numbers. He's 90th percentile or better in all three of the tee to green stats, so off the tee, approach, and around the green. And for being so long, he's actually one of the more accurate drivers in that upper tier. 88th percentile good drive rate over his past 100 rounds. And I've been saying this a lot, but he separates from me frequently because he's a good putter, just long-term, compared to other golfers that you would actually compare Jon Rahm to. And so just kind of does everything. And I think he's the one guy who I would feel best with. Maybe not necessarily betting outright, although 17 to 1's definitely a fair number. But he and DJ are not getting a lot of buzz yet. It's Tuesday morning. I would imagine that gets up higher on FanShare Sports, but like, I think there might be reasons for people not to be super in on Jon Rahm right now, just because there's so many other, like, DJ's so good. Bryson just won. This is like Rory is the defending champ here. I think like Rahm, again, no one's going to be chalky.
Yeah.
But like Rahm could definitely fly under the radar.
Works for me. So you like Rahm. I like Rahm. We both like Webb, who we'll talk about in a second. We both like Morikawa. Who do you like outside of that in this upper tier?
I really struggled with this one because we typically do 10,000 as our cutoff for like the upper, like where we draw the line. And I like Victor Hovland at 10.9. I like Tyrrell Hatton at 10.6. But I feel like we don't talk about guys in like the low 10K range often. But there's someone who I think is probably undersalaried, although I totally think like someone would have to be undersalaried if you bumped him up and moved someone else down for the most part. But it's Daniel Berger at 10,300. He fits a balanced build at that salary, and he just has the right game for TPC Sawgrass. He has driving accuracy on his side. He has the irons on his side. A very, very good putter as well. Again, I'm not putting a ton of stock into this, but 4 under through 1 round last year. And my data has him ranked as the 6th best golfer in weighted adjusted strokes gained over the past calendar year. But he's 6th there, but 16th in salary. He's 90th percentile in adjusted strokes gained off the tee, 93rd percentile in approach, 70th percentile or better in distance and accuracy because he's just a really balanced driver of the golf ball. So like he does everything except thrive around the green, and he's still above the field average there. So like I would be fine building around like Daniel Berger, Tyrrell Hatton, Victor Hovland. It's scary like not to build around DJ and Rahm and Rory, but you can do it and feel pretty good about your lineup.
So if you were to do a Webb, Hatton, and Berger lineup, your remaining per golfer is 9,300. That's very doable. You can get back into the mid to high 9,000 range at that. Like if you plug in our guy, not to give the whole thing away, but like Russell Henley, if you put him in there, like 9,450, like that's pretty good. So I think there's value in that, and that's a lineup I'd like to have. I think Berger does make a lot of sense for the reasons that you alluded to. You were talking about you want golfers who can theoretically lead the field in both strokes gained tee to green and putting. He's not the most likely guy to do that, but that's within his range of outcomes. And I think that's pretty valuable to have for sure. Second guy here for me is Webb Simpson. We talked about him before, but it's just really hard for me to say no to Webb whenever distance matters less. His ball striking will be solid. He ranks 18th in good drives gained and 40th in approach the past 50 rounds. But the short game will be outlier-ishly good, like probably pretty good. He is third around the green, fifth in Bermuda putting. Even with a bunch of distance courses recently, or at least not purely placement courses outside of the WGC Workday, Webb has been getting good finishes. In 18 events since the end of the COVID layoff, he has 13 top 20 finishes, 8 top 10s in 18 events. And that includes a win at the RBC Heritage. 11-2 seems like a tremendous number to me. So I think that Webb works really well. Did have in here that I would be good with Colin Morikawa too. So I think we're on pretty much the same page. Could be good, could suck, but at least we'll go down together. Why not?
I would say Webb specifically, though. I feel safest with Webb than like anybody else, just based on what his game is.
So I would say, like, we talk about how usually if you were to give me these odds and salaries, I would say, okay, DJ is the first guy you lock into a cash game. I don't think that's the case this week. I think that Webb is actually the first guy I put in my cash game roster.
Yeah, because he's not going to get in trouble off the tee. He's going to hit everything well to the green, and he can just make as many putts as anybody else. So I think he's a really high floor player. That's why I like Xander so much, because he does everything. Like Morikawa still has volatility with his putter, which is
correct.
Can be good and terrible. So I think Webb is the safest play at the top.
I agree. Is he the first guy you go to in cash games?
Probably, although salary based on salary, it might be Daniel Berger, because I think he's the most undersalaried stud that we have.
I think that the super balanced lineup with Webb as the highest salary guy is in play for cash games. Yeah. Very much in play. Maybe preferable
and for tournaments.
Yeah,
I think for tournaments too, because if you build around all those guys, like you can get some of these golfers we're about to talk about. I'll just spoil it again, but like Sungjae Im, Joaquin Neiman, these guys can win or top 5.
Yep.
It's a whole lot different than whenever we're talking about whoever we'll talk about in the 8K range.
So talk to me about Sungjae, and we'll go from there.
The like super current form is pretty wild. Just if you dig into what he's doing, he's getting strokes with the driver and the putter, but like not in between. But he's still 45th percentile for me in adjusted strokes gained approach over the past calendar year. 93rd percentile in fairways gained. He's rounding back into form, I think, overall, especially with the driver and the putter being solid. And if he brings the irons like we know that he can do in certain weeks, he could thrive at TPC Sawgrass. He missed the cut in 2019, but he did play here. Gained 1.8 strokes tee to green in his 2 measured rounds. And for me, like, I don't know how I'm factoring in putting because they are over seeded greens, but Sungjae Im on Bermuda is a big plus as well.
One thing I wanted to go back to, which is relevant for Sungjae and for Berger, is that when you're looking at course history this week, make sure you are accounting for the fact that the most recent one was in 2019, because 2021 Sungjae is very different than 2019 Sungjae, and 2021 Berger is not the same human being as 2019 Berger. So account for that. I would not hold that against guys like this, specifically who have made major changes within the past 2 years. Let's talk about Joaquin Neiman. We talked about before, as a guy whose odds have lengthened, but still in on him. I think that he's worth buying into at $9,800 because the putting on non-bentgrass surfaces has gotten less terrible than it was. We know the ball striking will be good. He is 35th in good drives gained, 36th in approach. Also not bad around the green. He's 51st there. But the big question is putting, because he's 128th in Bermuda putting the past 100 rounds, but he hasn't bottomed out in a long time, and I think there's actually quite a bit of value in that. He has not lost more than 2 strokes putting since the Northern Trust back in August, and that was also his last missed cut. He's been good since then. 3 top 3 finishes in that time. I would prefer him on bentgrass still, obviously, because he actually has pretty good data there, but with the gains that he's made on the greens and avoiding absolute destruction, I can live with him for sure. And as mentioned before, everyone in this range has a red flag. I think that the red flag for Neiman is becoming less concerning because he's been okay putting for so long. What are your thoughts on Neiman here at 9.8?
Should be good with the ball striking. 93rd percentile off the tee, 95th in approach. Not very accurate, but one of these players who would benefit if you looked at good drive rates gained like you are doing. He rates out better there. And again, if you're not accurate, but you are still hitting greens in regulation, gaining strokes off the tee, like that's fine for me. It's you don't have to be hitting fairways because that's probably one of the worst stats that you could look at overall. It's just more distance is not a necessity. So for Neiman, I would rank him at least third in the upper 9K range behind Sungjae and Fitzpatrick, but he would probably, he'd be third.
I would probably put him a tiny bit above Sungjae, but I'm okay putting him behind Fitzpatrick. Sure, that's fine. Sungjae versus Neiman, correct?
I am FanDuel points.
Okay, yeah.
I'm getting demolished.
Did we have him last week?
Yeah.
What was it?
I think so. Paul Casey over Fitzpatrick, and Casey had one more point than Fitzpatrick.
Huh. Still a win. Full win. Who else do you like in this mid-range?
I believe it's Abe Answer, but I was writing down the bet. Abe Answer, 9,400. Love him. I think he's going to be someone I play a ton of this week. Very up and down in 2021. That includes a 17th at the Tournament of Champions, then a missed cut at the Sony, 5th at the American Express, missed cut at the Genesis, 18th at the WGC Workday. He has gained, here are his strokes gained tee to green numbers in those. Lost 5.4, gained 2.7, gained 4.3, lost 0.9, gained 7. So good overall. One outlier being terrible. And I just like the fit for Answer at TPC Sawgrass. He's very accurate. And he's also not like prohibitively terrible in distance. He's 32nd percentile there, but overall 80th percentile in both adjusted ball striking stats, which is off the tee and approach. And just one of the most accurate drivers that we have. And he did finish 12th here in 2019 by gaining 8.1 strokes tee to green.
Yeah, and I think that Answer is in play for sure. I am very okay with him. Preferred option for me in this range is going to be Corey Connors, who is very similar to Joaquin Neiman, where he is still not a good putter, but he's getting better at avoiding absolute collapse. And I think that allows us to get more excited about his ball striking, because he did lose 3.1 strokes putting at the Genesis a few weeks ago, but that was on POA, where he's still really bad. He bounced back by gaining 3.8 at the Arnold Palmer last week. That was on Bermuda, which is where they were at this week as well. Outside of the Genesis, Connor's last truly bad putting performance was at the BMW back in August. Ranked second in good drives gained, 19th in approach. Around the green play, not terrible in 68th. So it is risky with Connors, because I would say I feel better about Neiman's putting right now than Connors. But I think the ball striking numbers will be good enough where I feel still good about him. So Connors is my preferred guy in the low 9,000 range. I would say by a decent margin. How do you feel about him?
I penciled in an AB Answer over Connors FanDuel points bet. Are you cool with that?
It. Yeah, okay. Sure. Why
not? I like Connors. Bet him top 10 last week. Did not bet him to win. At least I don't think I did.
Nice.
But no, I don't bet Corey Connors to win. Like, that's kind of what I'm getting at. Because for as good as he is with the ball striking, 91st percentile or better, and adjusted off the tee and approach, he just can't putt well enough for me to love. So I would rather play someone like Abe Answer over Corey Connors. Although we got the alliteration names there for those two.
Abe Answer, Corey Connors. I like it. And we also have Joaquin Neiman versus Sungjae Im. So two bets online the mid-range for this week. Who do you have in the value tier? $9,000 and lower for this week.
I'm going to go with Siwoo Kim, because I think that there's a very easy case to make for him. We talked about him already, but won here in 2017, made all 4 cuts this event, did withdraw last week, which we talked about, but I don't like, we haven't heard anything that it's injury related. And I think if it was, we probably would have known. The recent form has been bad since his recent win. So how bad can it really be? But assuming he's healthy, I think you should put zero stock into the 80 that he posted last week in the first round. He's 82nd percentile in adjusted strokes gained tee to green. He ranks 5th again in the field in strokes gained at PDI courses, 4th per round, according to Fantasy National, and was 7 under here through one round last year, for whatever that's worth to you.
And we are recording here on Tuesday morning, so if you get additional news on Siwoo Kim later on, adjust based on that. But as of right now, we're good with him.
Yes, if he's hurt and withdraws, don't play him.
Bold. bold. Although he'd be less rostered. So, being contrarian, always worth it. My first low salary guy and a guy I adore, potentially one of my favorite guys relative to salary this week is Russell Henley. Kind of confused about why he's down here, but I'm not going to complain because the stats are elite. He ranks 12th in good drives gained, second in the field and approach. He's 27th around the green. Bermuda is also his best putting surface, which is a plus. The approach has been especially good recently. Like we're talking, since the COVID layoff, he's been elite. Even in really recent stuff, good though. He's gained 2.6, 0.8, 4.1, and 2.5 strokes since January 1st in approach. The 0.8 was the one bad one, but that was also just 2 rounds because he missed the cut. And he had even bigger spike weeks over the summer. The lone issue with Henley that he's had recently has been his driving, but if distance matters less, he's one of those guys who can be more neutral there than he would be elsewhere. So I'm good banking on that at $9,000. I think that Henley is one of the guys I stole from you on the sheet. What put you on him?
My models love Russell Henley this week, and my models have been pretty good lately.
Okay.
That's not to say Russell Henley's going to win, but Russell Henley.
You can make that declaration. You can Joe Namath this thing. Let's go.
Russell Henley,
guaranteed winner. Say it.
No.
Say it.
Russell Henley for a top 10 or whatever, that looks pretty good. And he's so good with the irons. 98th percentile for me over the past year when you adjust for the fields he's in. 70th percentile around the green as well, which is one of the key stats. Hasn't fit at TPC Sawgrass, but he's also finished 24th and 35th. The form, though, then is not quite what it is now, and that's one of the most important factors, I think, for course form anyway. So I have him 20th in this field in weighted adjusted strokes gained total over the past calendar year, but he's tied for 39th in salary. So I think Russell Henley, just undervalued, undersalaried, and feel like we're gonna have at least
guaranteed winner. Just say it.
We're gonna have a 4v4, I think.
Yeah,
Webb and Henley at least.
Yeah, it's fine. No complaints. Who else do you like down here?
I really don't have anyone who I completely adore because yes, we see golfers in the 8K range finishing the optimal lineup here, but I don't think that's that predictive. I think it just means it's volatile, and there are also so many golfers who have a salary below 9,000 that yes, some of them are going to look good whenever they pop, and whenever they do at low salaries, they're going to make the optimal. But one name I would feel best with would be Taylor Gooch at 8,500. We talk about him pretty often, or at least I do. It's just because he's so balanced. He fits any course. You can kind of make a case for Taylor Gooch at any course, unless it's one of those really fluky courses where you have to be super long or have to be hyper accurate. But 59th percentile or better, or 49th percentile or better in strokes gained approach off the tee and around the green over the past year. So just hovering the baseline in all three of those stats, and a really good putter as well. I have him 80th percentile when adjusted for field. So missed the cut in 2019, but gained 4.7 strokes from approach in that over 2 rounds. Was terrible elsewhere, but I think Taylor Gooch is one of the best plays below 8,900. So if we cut off Siwoo Kim.
I agree. I think that he is an option there for sure. I would also mention that I don't hate the idea of using Cameron Tringali again. I think that he kind of is similar to Gooch, where pretty well-rounded and a guy you can justify at a lot of places. So I think Tringali at $8,800 is someone I would consider as well. But my second low-salary guy is Sam Burns, because last week, not ideal. The around the green play could come back to bite him in a good field, but the approach and the putting should both be there. And that's worth a whole lot, because let's look at where guys rank on Fantasy National in approach and Bermuda putting the past 100 rounds. The approach for the past, and second in Bermuda putting in the field. Nobody else in the field is in the top 25 in both. The only other guys in the top 40 in both are Webb Simpson, good. Tyrrell Hatton, good. Lonzo Griffin, the best, obviously. Daniel Berger, and Kevin Kisner. They got kind of shaky there at the end, but Berger, Hatton, Simpson, we're on all those guys. Burns isn't an accuracy golfer. We can say that for sure. So the course fit may not be there, but he's not a sprayer. He is 97th in fairways gained, 77th in good drive rate. I think he can hit them better when he needs to. So there is risk due to the accuracy. There is risk due to the around the green play. But I think there's upside here with Sam Burns. And I like that a lot at $9,000. So I'm going to take Sam Burns again this week. Brandon, what are your thoughts on Burns? Does the course fit push you away?
I think that's the thing. For me, anyone who's listened for a while knows I love Sam Burns. I don't know if this is the right week for him. And for as much as I need golfers to save me some salary if I'm trying to build around the studs, which I will have some lineups that do that because it's not like I dislike any of the studs and there are a lot of names we just kind of glossed over. But I think I prefer some other golfers right around there. So I probably won't have any Sam.
Would you want to do a Burns versus Gooch head to head?
I don't know.
I'm not getting. We already have two, so I don't need to talk you into it if you don't want it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I'll pass on that because I'll pass
Win
on
picks.
that one.
Win picks. Two golfers you like relative to their current odds over at FanDuel Sportsbook. I know the two I am taking. Do you want to go first or do you want me to just spill the beans here?
You go because I'm really, really struggling with this because I try to look at what my model says where the value is, and it's as Jake Peralta would say, it's pretty toit.
So toit odds this week. I think the less.
Although Sam Burns is the second best value.
Of course he is.
So
naturally, because he's going to win. My picks this week are Webb and Hatton. I think that the ability to do really well with the ball striking stats and also putt well is enticing. So I'll just take those two guys. Webb is 22-1. Hatton is 33-1. Who do you want?
Okay, so among the favorites, my model prefers Xander, which at 2,400 or 24-1 is nice. But I didn't talk about him enough, and I don't think he could absolutely win here. But I will go with Morikawa at 22, and my boy Daniel Berger at 44. I think that's a really good number for him.
Okay, I do like the Berger one. I think that's fun. So should be an interesting week. You have Morikawa and Berger, and I have Webb and Hatton. We'll see how things play out, which means that Webb guaranteed to win next week, not this week. That is all that we have for today here on the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast. But as a reminder, Brandon is back with you 3:30 p.m. Eastern on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Periscope pages to answer your questions about PGA, DFS, and betting. Brandon, if people have questions for you on Twitter, where can they find you there?
I'm at Gdula13, GDULA13.
And I am at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald, our video producer, for running the video side of things here today. Thank you, Cal, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck to you with the Players' Championship. We'll talk to you once again next week. This has been the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, powered by numberFire.